Hi, this is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer of Community Culture Showcase. And it is a wonderful, finally, we have spring. Look outside, it's sunny, it's almost warm, and we can call it springtime. So we've gotten through the winter. April was the rainiest month on record, and now we're here to enjoy the spring. And when springtime comes in this part of the world, we have our International Film Festival, a great opportunity to see films you would not otherwise ever have the opportunity to see, and they're right here in our neighborhood, and you can support our community. We also have the support of Jewish Federation for putting on this wonderful film festival, and also for the wonderful independent filmmakers out there who have an opportunity to show an American audience some outstanding films. So I want to introduce my guest, Jerry Fischer, who is the Executive Director of Jewish Federation, and also the guy behind this wonderful film festival. So tell us about the film festival, and again, milestone, 25 years.
Well, it's very exciting to reach this milestone for me, because the film festival started as a small little project of a young Israeli woman, Ayelet Price, who came to our community to work for 2 years. And the second year she was here, she said, "Jerry, let's do an Israel Film Festival." So we used the auditorium in the Olin Science Center, and I think we screened 4 movies. And all of them were screened at the Olin Science Center Theater. And then over the years, with the efforts of remarkable people, Jennifer Friedman, Sherry Barnes, and Arlene Dressler and Faye Clymer, the festival grew and grew and grew. The Garde Art Center got involved, gave us the venue. Then the Mystic Luxury Cinemas got involved and gave us a venue. And then we went to Westerly, we went to Willimantic, and we show small films in the BP Learned House. And we still use Olin Science Center for the films that would attract 80 to 100 people. So now we're in many venues across the shoreline, and we've had some spectacular films in the past. We had The Life and Times of Hank Greenberg, and his daughter, Alva Greenberg, introduced that. We had the Nuremberg trials, and Chris Dodd, the son of Thomas Dodd, the person who was the prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials, introduced that film, and we had a marvelous panel discussion after that. We've had some remarkable films about the civil rights movement and Jewish involvement in the civil rights movement. And this year, to celebrate, we're actually going beyond films. We're going to have a choir, a Besser Welt, a Better World, come and sing for us. One of the members of the choir, Norman Berman, grew up as a Jewish farmer kid in Danielson. And he's a member of that shul, and now he lives in Boston and he sings with his choir. So he's bringing down the choir, and we're going to have a wonderful opening concert for the first half of the program. And then we're going to show a film that Nancy Spielberg, Steven Spielberg's sister, was involved in producing, called Who Will Write Our History? And it's based on a book by a local professor from Trinity College, Sam Cassow.
Okay.
And it's an award-winning movie, and it promises to be an exceptional program.
What's wonderful about the film festival is it's a mixture. So you'll have some documentaries, you have some docudramas based on some real events, you'll have just dramas in general, and then you have some shorts. So there's a little bit of everything for
There's
everyone.
a little bit of everything. It did evolve. It's no longer an Israeli film festival.
Right.
That's how it started. It's now truly an international film festival, and we have films from France, from Hungary, from all over the world.
Right.
The most exciting thing is that other organizations have become involved in helping us draw audience and helping us to showcase the films to audiences and segments of the population that might have never paid attention to it. we're opening with Besra Welt, but we're closing with a movie called The Law. And it's essentially a docudrama. It's an amazing story of France going through what they had to go through to legalize abortion.
Right, right.
In a highly religious Catholic country. It was quite a struggle. So in between then, you know, we've got 93 Queen about Hasidic women who said, we're going to run an ambulance service too,
right.
not just the men.
Yes.
And 93 Queen is really, really amazing.
It is a documentary. Now, I must tell you that I have, unlike Jerry, I have actually seen all of the movies that we bring to his attention. There's something like 50 movies. I'm a member of the film committee, and there's about 10 of us, 12 of us on the committee, and we're the ones who do the hard work. You see, Jerry does the easy stuff. He sort of says, okay, let's run with this one. But we go through, and I have to say they come from all over the world, and some of them are just plain tedious. Some of them are absolutely awful. And then there are some that, if you know anything about the kind of movie distribution system, are very expensive for us to actually show. So there's, you know, I've been on this committee about 3 years, and I've learned a huge amount. Number one, I've had the great pleasure, really, of seeing something like 150 films I would never, ever have the opportunity to see. And second, I sort of learned a little bit about how movies are distributed in this, not only in the country, in the world, because we use distributors who are actually worldwide. And it's a fascinating kind of link. And I have to tell you, Faye and Arlene, who do all this negotiation and manipulation with all these distributors, hats off for them, because it is a tiresome kind of thing to actually what they do. Talking with people, trying to get a right price, the right time, all of those things that really matter. And the film industry, I mean, you can probably think about it. When things are hot, they become very expensive. When things sort of cool, like we have things that movies that may have been nominated for an Oscar here in this country, or some kind of award in Israel or England or somewhere, all of a sudden they're hot. They're, in fact, too hot to touch. Then they lose. And so they're simply a nominee, and then we can get our hands on some of them. So it's really much more intricate than I thought when I first came on the committee. I thought, oh, okay, I'll see a few movies. It's a lot more of a commitment, and it's a lot more difficult to do. So again, hats off to people like Faye and Arlene, who are the chair people of this committee and who really know the nuts and bolts of getting things accomplished. So it's not as easy as it looks, but we want you to come and think it's easy because we want you to enjoy the films. So tell us.
Well, there's something else that's ironic given what you said about costs. This is our 25th anniversary of a film festival, and it's also Schindler's List's 25th anniversary. So the movie Schindler's List is being offered by the studio for free. So we're showing it to schools on Tuesday, May 21st. And that screening will start at 9:30 in the morning. And the general public is welcome to come to that screening at 9:30 in the morning. And then we're showing it again in the evening at 6:30 at night, also free and open to the public. And this is a remastered movie. And Steve Siegel, whose parents are Holocaust survivors, is dedicating the screening of this movie to members of his family that perished.
Yes, and Steve is the
executive director of the Garde.
Of the Garde in downtown New London.
Yes. So you'll see Schindler's List on the big screen. I have to tell you, the first time I saw Schindler's List was with Rabbi Isidore Greengrass in Montreal, Canada, before it was released. And Rabbi Greengrass, who's passed away now, was a Holocaust survivor. And I was sitting with him in the balcony of this movie theater in Montreal, and he thought he was watching a documentary. He said, how did they get it to be in color? And, you know, how did that raid happen? And I said, this is not a documentary, Rabbi Greengrass. He says, it's so real. I said, yes, it is. So we're very happy to be able to offer the community an opportunity to see Schindler's List. long film. That's why we're starting it at 9:30 in the morning for the school kids. And
Right.
6:30 in the morning, because you won't get out till 9:30. It's a 3-hour film.
For people who are not familiar, why don't you tell us a little bit about Schindler's List?
Oskar Schindler was a manufacturer. And for some reason, he was determined to save as many Jews as possible. He's actually buried in Jerusalem, and in Yad Vashem, at the Israel's Holocaust Museum, there's a tree planted in his name. There's an avenue called the Avenue of the Righteous, and there are trees planted in the names of individuals who saved Jews. And there's a tree for Oskar Schindler. But what he did was he gave the Germans lists of people who worked for him who must remain with him because he needed their skills in order to produce things for the Germans. So it's ironic. He was manufacturing for the Germans, but by the very act of manufacturing for the Germans, he was saving Jews who worked in his factory. And he would give the Germans a list of the people who had to stay with him in his factory.
Including children.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Children and women.
children.
I was in his factory in Krakow.
Oh.
This all took place in Krakow, and the film is about the concentration camp that was near Krakow. An interesting aside for those of us who live on the shoreline is that we also showed a movie in our film festival, I think last year, maybe the year before, about the Danish rescue of the Jews.
Oh, right, right.
And one of the boats that rescued the Jews and brought them from Denmark to Sweden is tied up at the Mystic Seaport. We're thrilled that the studio offered us Schindler's List.
Right, right.
And then all the other films are just remarkable movies. And you're right, the committee works very hard. And you're also right, I intentionally don't watch the movies, not only because I don't have time, but because I wanted to be a neutral arbiter.
Right.
I didn't want to push my particular things. Next year, after I retire, I might be able to watch the films and be more of an advocate than a neutral arbiter. But.
Yeah, we tried to balance on the committee funny versus sad, the Holocaust versus other kinds of stories that are out there.
Right.
And there are many stories being told. And then we try to balance it, whether it's a documentary or simply a film, a regular drama. So we try to make that kind of balance that happens because we are exposed to an awful lot of films. And then we think about our audience. So we have a certain kind of audience we think maybe a little bit older who might want to come and see our films. So we don't, we look to try to match our audience with the films, hopefully that will fill up the theater.
And it's over the years, it's been hard to find good comedies.
Yes, yes.
Our history, unfortunately, is a little more tragic than funny. But we've had a couple of good comedies.
Oh, yes, we've had some wonderful comedies.
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
And we had some food shows. We don't have a food movie this year.
Right.
But remember, for a few years, we always try and get a food movie in.
That's right, so we can get...
We had a movie about delicatessens, a movie about hummus, a movie about bagels.
Yes. All of these things, and they're funny.
And the Falafel Wars movie.
Oh, yes.
The Falafel Wars, who made the better falafel.
So those are the kinds of wonderful little sides that we actually bring into the community, and we often do it at that Learned Center because it has a fabulous kitchen.
Yes, so we've had some great small meals at the BP Learned Center.
And what's nice about the film festival is that in fact you have several venues. And that makes it very nice. Yeah. So, and it also means that some of the commercial distributors, and not only distributors, the venues are willing to help us and provide us venues.
Yeah. So, we've had tremendous cooperation, particularly from the Garde and Mystic Luxury Cinemas, but also Conn College. I mean, that's a beautiful little theater. We showed a film there yesterday as part of our Holocaust commemoration, and it's nice. It's nice to fit the theater to the audience.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, absolutely.
There are just some movies that are going to attract 50 or 60 people, but they're worth showing.
Right.
And some movies that'll attract 200 or 300 people, and those are worth showing too.
I can remember when there was a Senator Dodd's movie about his father in the Nuremberg trials. The place was packed.
Yeah.
The place was absolutely packed.
And when they did my movie,
Yes.
we had the balcony filled.
Yes, you should
Harvesting
just,
Stones.
yes,
Yeah.
there, it's out there.
The movie about, yes, it's out there. You can buy the DVD. Just call the office.
Yes.
Yes.
So yes, we're with a filmmaker who's an award nominated.
Not Emmy, 3 Emmy nominations.
Yes, there we go. So you have a good taste for the film business.
I enjoyed it.
Exactly,
Enjoyed it very
exactly.
much.
So going back to opening night, what you're doing is sort of doing a few films before there's an official opening.
Right.
And a lot of other films, then we're going to have an official end, and then we're going to have a film after the official end.
Right.
Yes. So kind of talk about a little
right,
bit
well,
about the scheduling.
So the thing that's amazing here is that we start Tuesday, May 19th with 93 Queen, a delightful movie.
Right.
It's not quite a comedy, but it's
funny.
It's funny.
It's
The
funny.
all-female ambulance corps of religious women in New York City.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about it is the main focus of it is an attorney who becomes a judge. So, you know, for people who, even Jews who think they know about the Orthodox community, this one is an eye-opener and a really pleasant surprise, because where the focus goes is this woman is dynamite.
Right.
And it's people like that actually change.
A real activist.
Yeah,
She's
change
a real
the
activist.
community, absolutely.
And then on Thursday, May 16th, we're showing The Cake Maker. And this is a gay love story. Mm-hmm. It's a gay love story, but the lover who passes away never quite left his wife and his family. Mm-hmm. And then his European lover comes to Israel, and it's
a very touching movie, I can
Yes,
say that.
yeah.
And it shows you something that you don't always think of in terms of this kind of film festival it is. And we have in the past shown other films about the gay life, so that this is not of by itself something that's a breakthrough, but it is a lovely, lovely story.
Yes, it is.
Beautifully told. And
then
then you watch them making these cakes, and
And the whole issue of cake decorating and gays in our country now, which went to the Supreme Court and wasn't decided the way I wanted to decide.
Oh, yes, that's true. That's true.
And then we open with our gala opening on Sunday, May 19th in the afternoon. We're thrilled that Timothy Grills, the executive chef of Mitchell College, is providing lunch for the choir when they
very
come
nice.
here, and is providing the appetizer reception after the concert and the film. And the film, as I said, is tied to this book written by Professor Sam Kassow, which documents how people in the Warsaw Ghetto recorded everything that was happening to them.
Yes.
And then it was dug up and it was found, and he wrote a book, and then Nancy Spielberg made a movie of that book. And he is very happy with the movie. So
Okay.
it's nice when an author is happy with
What's
how
been done, yes.
the film version of what he wrote is done.
Yes.
So 2 soft openings and then the gala opening.
Right.
And then we're closing with the law. And the law, again, will be shown at the Garde.
Right.
But right after that closing, official closing on Sunday, June 2nd, we're going to the Granite Theater for
Right.
the first time ever
Right.
to show a classic old film, Gentleman's Agreement.
Yeah, so that film will be shown. We have in the past went to Westerly, which is again on the shoreline, as to participate in the film festival. So this year we're going to the Garde. It's the first time. It's the first time that they are participating, and it's wonderful because they are also a kind of community nonprofit and right there in the middle of town. So it's wonderful for them to participate. The synagogue I belong to, Congregation Sarah Zedek, is going to host a reception before the movie. They have a very nice lobby where the granite is, and we'll have lots of food, homemade food. We have wonderful bakers in our congregation. And then we'll show the movie, and then after the movie, we'll have a little discussion for anyone who wants to stay, and most people won't stay, is about this whole thing about hate and hate crimes and what's going on in the country and in the world. And I'll talk because my own daughter is a physician was trained in Pittsburgh and happened to know the doctor who was murdered in that synagogue by white nationalists.
In the Tree of Life synagogue.
Yes, Tree of Life. And so she related to me, you know, what she remembered about him. And I have to say, my daughter is not a religious person. And when she saw and heard about what happened to Tree of Life, I think it was for the very first time in her life that she said, "Oh my God, I'm a Jew." And there's all kinds of consequences for being a Jew. We win a lot of Nobel Prizes, but we're also the target for, even in America, some right-wing, white nationalist crazies out there who are fed by the internet and do all these horrific kinds of activities. I thought it would only be Pittsburgh, but of course, then it happened in California. So
yeah, there's a lot of concern in the world, but for sure in our country, about religious ethno-nationalism. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the incidents of hate overall have increased.
yes,
There was shootings in churches,
yes, and mosques.
shootings in synagogues, and then the horrific slaughter in New Zealand.
Right, right.
And then the slaughter in Sri Lanka, and we're witnessing a world war of religiously motivated hatred, and we have to learn to deal with that and stop it.
We have to take it in this country much more seriously than I think we have in the past.
Yes.
And in the world itself, they need to be able to share information. The internet is a wonderful form of information, but it can be a deadly form of information.
Well, it could be, but for us, go to www.jfec.com to see our film festival listed. Go to the Garde Arts Center webpage to see our film festival listed. And come to our festival this year. It's an exceptional year.
We want, yes, because by part of the way that you can change minds is simply just making people aware. And entertainment is a wonderful source of making people aware of things that they probably never have been. Yes, yes, definitely.
But
definitely.
that's the story of Gentleman's Agreement.
Exactly, exactly.
You know?
So it's an Oscar winner from 1947. It's black and white, but it is moving, and it's the great star, of course, is Gregory Peck. And it is a story of a journalist who sort of uses that as a cover to, in fact, uncover anti-Semitism. Yeah. And it's a moving kind of movie, and even though it's several decades old, it still has a message that resonates. And again, this is the kind of story that you don't want to hit people over the head. By doing it in an entertaining way, you're able to send your message out there, and at the end, you don't feel like you've been in a school lecture or something like that.
Right,
yes, exactly, exactly. And we tried to do that with all of the movies we present. We, some of them are funny, so there's nothing behind it. Some of them are far more serious. This whole idea of doing Schindler's List again after 25 years is a kind of a wake-up call, I think, across the country that things need to. Well,
after they had that Nazi march in Charlottesville, where they were chanting, "Jews will not replace us."
Yes.
So to show Schindler's List, to show who will write our history, to let people know that vile strain of anti-Semitism still flickers.
Still exists.
You have to put it out.
Yes, exactly. And then, of course, and also it feeds the anti-Muslim, other kinds of crazy anti-black feelings and burning down churches.
The hatred of the other instead of the respect and the compassion for the other. That's the key. Our country, and believe it or not, Israel, are countries that are amalgams of so many different cultures and traditions and religions. And we should be, as Jews, we always say we're going to be a light unto the nations.
Yes.
And as Americans, we say we're to be a light unto the nations.
Yes.
And we should be.
Yes.
And that light is respect and compassion and understanding.
Yes, and I think using film is a wonderful vehicle for making people aware. I think lots of times people just simply are not aware, and this way they can sort of open up their eyes.
Yep.
And we do have these, wonderful things. Beside that, there's that wonderful, cute little movie, Shoelaces, which is going to be on Wednesday, May 22nd at the Mystic Luxury Cinemas. They have been very good with us over the years in being a venue for the film festival. And this is a very lovely film. Also, it's surprising. I mean, it starts out in a kind of an interesting way, and then it really expands on it, and it's really just a wonderful film. Makes you just feel good, and that's important. That's really important.
Yep. Yep.
So what else are we gonna? We also have The Last Supper.
Yes, and it's not what you think it's about from the title.
No.
It's not the Last Supper of the religious tradition.
Yes, that's right.
It's the Last Supper of a family in Germany.
Exactly. And it's actually very surprising what they actually discuss in this movie. It's not at all what I expected as watching it for the very first time, and now. This is I've seen it 2 times already, and now it'll be the 3rd time. And it was, you really weren't sure that these things took place, but then I went ahead and you read later and you find out that the whole idea during the 1930s, when things were so difficult for people were not, because of the Great Depression, people turned to things that were really very simplified, and that became an attraction. I mean, that's through history.
For German Jews, for the Jews in Germany, right up until the war, they could not bring themselves to believe there was going to be a final solution. It's remarkable. I was just talking yesterday at United Methodist Church about how Frankfurt had 6,000 Jews, 4,999 left, but 1,001 stayed. They could have left, and they stayed. And Henny Simon's father, who got out, he was a war hero of World War I. He was a hero of Germany.
Right.
He could not bring himself to believe that Hitler would do this to the Jews. So the Jews of Germany were a tragic story in their inability to see the reality of what's going to happen.
And that is a kind of a story that's not everywhere you see it, but in fact it actually happens it's happened in other places as well, where you think that you're comfortable and that you're part of it, and then you have
something terrible happens.
Very, very rude awakening to what went on. And I think what happens is, again, I'm just from seeing these movies, I think what happens is that people think, well, all right, Hitler is an aberration, but the German people are good. These are the people that have created some of the greatest culture in the world.
Yes.
How could they turn on people who have also contributed to that culture? And also the story about having contributed to being soldiers in World War I.
Yes.
Being physicians to the Kaiser. I mean, they held great positions in society, and it was too much for them.
Well, that's a little bit of what was scary about the Jews will not replace us chant in Charlottesville, is the idea that in some circles in Germany, they thought the Jews were replacing the Germans.
Right.
And they didn't like that. But there's something else that ought to be said, which is we as human beings always try and see the rosy side of a picture. We don't want to see the dark side of a picture. Even when the dark side of the picture is really what you should focus on, you try and look for the good.
Right.
And you can blind yourself. You know, so you always, and for Jews, and I think for people around the world, the Holocaust, which we're still commemorating for a few more days, the Holocaust is a signal event of pay attention to the dark things that show up and make sure that that reality is there and react to it.
Right.
Don't paint it over. Don't look at it through a rose-colored lens.
Right. No, it
You
is.
have- you have to fight it.
It is a
You have to
yes.
fight
It
it.
is a warning. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That people should not become too complacent
Right.
in their position. So we were together yesterday at this Holocaust remembrance, and and I didn't get to see it, but there was a film about Hungarian Jews. Now I am of Hungarian descent, so those things interest me. And what's kind of historically, of course, Herzl was also a Hungarian
Viennese
Jew.
Hungarian. Yeah.
Yes, and he also thought that he was a journalist, he thought he could get in through society, and of course, he came up right in his face, and it didn't happen, and then that gave rise to his real great interest in Zionism and for Jews to return to Israel.
Right.
But
well, when the Dreyfus trial took place, Herzl said, "Oh my gosh, we're really in trouble here. Here's a court in France, the country of liberté, égalité, fraternité,
Right.
framing a Jew
right,
and convicting him." And he wasn't alone. Emile Dreyfus,
right,
Emile Zola,
right.
wrote a lot about the
Yes.
trial, as did many other French writers and intellectuals. But Herzl said, we need a solution. And he was right.
Yes, absolutely.
Tragically, he was proven to be very right.
Yes, and of course, I, of a Hungarian descent, I keep tabs on the present Hungarian government, and it is
Not a
also
good government.
No, veering to the right, bringing up the old rubbish from years ago. And you always know when the Hungarian government wants to attack the Jews, they always say George Soros, who is a Hungarian and a Jew and a very successful businessman. And so when they bring up his name, they blame Soros, you know that it's
He's
just
standing
code.
in for all the Jews.
Yes,
Yep.
it's just code. And so you do see a rise in right-wing politics and white nationalism, not only in the United States, but all over Europe. And again, some of it has to do with just what you were talking about, the other. So instead of embracing the other as bringing enrichment and a new perspective for a country, you think of them, the stranger, and therefore to be mistrusted.
Right.
That somehow they're going to do you in.
Yep.
And that's how we've, managed. And I have to say, the film festival presents these ideas in a much, in an entertaining way, but people will walk away, if you see a few of these movies, you will walk away, I'm not saying necessarily wiser, but you certainly will have different expectations, and you will have learned something that may, in fact, sort of open up your eyes.
You'll be
to what's out.
sensitive. You'll be
Yes,
sensitized.
Yes, exactly.
And that's really an important part of what art does, is it sensitizes you to things that you might otherwise not be sensitive to.
Right, exactly.
And that's particularly with film.
Yes.
Particularly with film. Schindler's List is a complicated story.
Yes.
It's not a simple story.
Yeah. And he was a complicated man.
Oh my gosh, yes.
He had many vices. It's the whole idea of the flawed individual can still save the world.
That's right.
And of
That's
course,
right.
as Jews, we have that wonderful saying that is, one person can save the world, and we actually wholeheartedly believe that.
And the loss of one person is like losing a whole world. Okay.
Yes, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And so we are inviting you, of course, let me pick up my thing, to come to many of our movies and many of our venues. say a little bit more, if you can, about our history, about doing this kind of stuff, and maybe even what you're interested in doing now that you are a filmmaker. I'll give you a spotlight.
In my movie Harvesting Stones, I featured many, many Jewish farmers in eastern Connecticut. One of those farmers was Henny Simon. Henny Simon passed away a few years ago, but her longtime companion towards the end of her life was Ben Cooper. He was a liberator of the Dachau camp. He was an American soldier, a medic, went into Dachau. And I went with Henny to Hanover for her very last trip to Hanover, the city of her birth and her childhood. And Ben Cooper was too ill to come, so I accompanied Henny. But when she gave her public lecture in Hanover, the first slide that went up was a picture of Ben Cooper in his Eisenhower jacket. And the two of them were really in love. And at the end of our stay in Hanover, where she received so much love from the city, she said, I can come back to my home now. I feel welcomed again. So I want to make a movie that'll be called Henny, Benny, and Hanover, a love story.
Oh, very sweet.
So I've got a good title.
Yes.
Now I've got to raise some money and make the movie.
And make a story.
Yeah,
Yes,
make a story.
exactly.
I think I'll do it.
Yes. Now, the German government has done more than many other governments that were clearly, this was, although Hitler was an Austrian, I mean, this is
Right.
where the
Yeah.
seat of power came from Germany itself. I mean, they have made reparations.
Oh, yes. Reparations is
Is it a very important thing, taking responsibility?
Take responsibility.
The Austrian government has never taken responsibility, so
Not only the Austrian government, Harriet, the Austrian people have never taken responsibility.
Well, sometimes
You would tour Freud's home in Vienna, and at the end of the tour, they tell you that Freud left, and they don't tell you why he left.
Yes.
They just say, Freud left, went to America. They don't say a word about anti-Semitism. And, you know, Kurt Waldheim was a Nazi.
Yes, he was. Yes, the president
Of Austria, and then the United Nations guy.
Right, the UN head.
And he was a Nazi.
Right.
And when Hitler came into Austria and the Anschluss, he was welcomed with flowers and a parade. And so, no, Austria, Hanover, Germany, and Germany in general, repentant and trying very hard to remember. Austria, not so much.
Not so much. And and of course the German government. So I have dear friends, and their mother was from Frankfurt, Germany. She and her two sisters were able to escape through bribes, and their parents, unfortunately, died in the Holocaust. But the sons, because she's still alive, and their government is still paying reparations, and they know where to get you. So they've contacted her sons to ask them if they wish to pick up their German heritage and to become German nationals. So I think that the government is trying, even at this point in its history.
You're absolutely right. It's a fascinating phenomena. It's happened in Spain, and I believe in Portugal as well, and it's happened in Germany, where they're inviting Jews to come back and to reassume citizenship and membership. Spain expelled us in 1492.
Right.
And now they're inviting us to come back.
Right.
And Hanover, there's a Jewish community in Hanover, and it's supported by the city government.
Right.
It's remarkable.
Well, there is a movement in Israel and the United States and in Europe where there is this idea that Hitler should not be right, and that Europe should not, Central and Eastern Europe, should not be Jew-free, and that there should be Jews in these parts of the world. And in actually what's happened is Russian Jews have moved to Germany and to the Ukraine, supported by these other agencies for this very fact so that these countries should not be Jew-free.
Look at the Ukraine. It's one of the most amazing stories. a Jewish president and a Jewish prime minister of the Ukraine,
Right. So
where Babi Yar was.
You started out in 1939 with almost 1 million Jews. You'll end up in 1945 with something like a couple of thousand. And now, so some of these Russian Jews have been invited and they've come
Right.
Same thing with Germany. There's about 100,000 Jews in Germany today. Most of them are actually Russian Jews.
Yes.
And I had this wonderful chance meeting when I was in Israel. I was in Haifa. And there was some kind of party going on in the hotel. So my husband and I, we joined this. We don't know what we're doing, and there are Jews walking, singing and dancing and carrying the Torahs around. And I have after we're eating a little bit, I have a little chit chat with the rabbi. She's a woman. She says she's Russian, and she went to Germany. And in Germany, she became very interested in being a Jew. She was ordained, and she came to Haifa with a primarily Jewish congregation who knows really nothing about Judaism. And so she's kind of training them and teaching them all about their religion. And so that's a wonderful story about how this kind of stuff can actually happen. And we have, we as Jews have, all these thousands of years of history that we have before us.
Long history.
Yeah,
Long
so we can always think today's event has, perhaps with the exception of what happened at the Holocaust, has some kind of representation in our past.
Yes.
And it is, yes. So let's go back to the film festival, because that's why we're
doing this show.
Why we're here. But I want to remind people, if they want information, they can go ahead and look on the website, jfec.com, but also to take a look at the different offerings that we have. There are many, that all kinds of tastes. So there's it, and do come to the grand opening, the opening gala. It's going to be a concert and 2 movies. Here's the concert. So Jerry, tell us a little bit about this group again.
Well, this is a Yiddish choir, and they developed a program to commemorate the Warsaw Ghetto Revolt. And we're going to hear them sing. They're actually a world-renowned choir. When Hitler tried to kill the Jews, he killed just about 6 million of us. But what he really succeeded, sadly, in killing was the Yiddish language, which was a spoken language throughout Poland and Russia, and was the lingua franca, the common tongue. To have the Yiddish choir sing in Yiddish is very important. It's sort of like another way of saying Hitler didn't win.
Right.
Yesterday, when we had our Holocaust commemoration, the idea that we framed the candle lighting around 2 Yiddish songs, Esperant and the Partisan Song, made it very special to me. You know?
Yes.
The language should continue to thrive as well.
Right, and there are corners and there are academics who are trying to create it.
There are academics or corners, and there's still some of the ultra-religious Jews who see Hebrew as the holy tongue and would only speak in Yiddish because they don't want to use Hebrew as a secular language. That's the last stronghold of Yiddish, but it's there, and that's good.
Yes, exactly. And so then we also have, we didn't talk about it, but we have a little short called A Night at the Garde. You want to talk about
scary.
Yes.
Scary. It's scary.
This is a documentary.
So it's scary to think that Madison Square Garden was filled with people supporting Hitler just before the war.
Right.
And I remember going to Hebrew school on the Upper East Side in Kehillat Jeshurun on 85th Street in a neighborhood called Yorkville. And my father telling me that before the war, and then he served in the war in Europe in World War II, but he told me that neighborhood was just pro-German, completely pro-German, and they filled Madison Square Garden with a rally in favor of Hitler.
Yes. And there are some very famous people that were associated with that movement, including people like, Charles Lindbergh. Some of it was taken up as this idea call for isolationism, but actually in many ways it was simply cover for the
real
rising-
anti-Semitism and for
right,
yeah.
anti-Semitism, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And there's a book out by a man named Hart, who speaks about the rise of fascism and Nazism and in this country during that period. So that there is certainly strong history about that.
Yeah.
And this is short. It's only like
It's 7 minutes, and but it was nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that I think will be something of an
unique.
eye opener.
It's unique.
Yes, definitely,
it's unique.
definitely. So you have everything you need. You have a movie, a short, and a musical concert, and then afterwards we have food. I mean, so I mean, how could life be richer than this? So we all, and in fact, in many of our activities, we also always have a little food. There's always some kind of reception going on for people. So we know you get hungry after sitting there for an hour or 2 hours. And we also tried to balance the length of the movies so that they weren't all 3 hours and 10 minutes. And they also, at the same time, if they were 7 minutes, there was another movie to accompany it, which was a little more than an hour. So you get a full day of entertainment for your admission price. So and we have to thank the Garde for taking us in.
All the films are $10, with the exception of the opening gala, which is $20.
Right.
But for $20, you get an awful lot.
Absolutely.
An awful lot.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. So if you're interested, we were telling you about all these wonderful movies. If you're interested, go ahead to the website, jfec.com, and you'll go ahead and you'll see a full listing of the movies, and there are a bit of everything. And again, they're being placed in several venues, and that's kind of important. If you live in Westerly, and you don't want to travel to New London, my God, it's 20 minutes. You can, go to the Granite Theater, support them, and support the film festival.
Or go to the Mystic Luxury Cinemas.
Go to the Mystic Luxury Cinemas, and you can support them, and you see some wonderful movies. And many of the other places where we will have a reception. There will be something for, eating and a little bit of drinking, and you'll have it'll be a wonderful full day for people to enjoy what's out there culturally. We want the public, the larger public, to support the film festival because it's an opportunity to see things that you ordinarily would not see. It also is an opportunity for organizations like the Garde New London, like the Mystic Cinemas in Mystic, to offer some interesting movies that they maybe didn't think they could have a full house for. If they're part of the film festival, it gives them greater exposure, more publicity, and people will then come on there and take a look at what's available. And if you haven't been to the Mystic Cinemas in a while, they have done some beautiful renovations. So it's more than a comfortable place to sit, and you can eat and drink there. I mean, they have wonderful offerings beside the movies that are there. So that's a great place to go. And then in addition, we have to put shout outs for longtime support from Connecticut College, which is gives us this Olin Center where we also host a number of movies, and that's very, very nice of the college. And they've been a long time, as Jerry was describing. They were the first venue for the film festival 25 years ago.
Yes.
So that's wonderful and I'm not sure the college, the kids are even in session, so it makes parking a little easier.
Parking won't be a problem.
Yes. And also, we have the BP Learned Mission, which is right there in...
It's part of Child and Family Agency. Yes.
If you want to talk a little bit about that group, because it sort of doesn't seem to kind of fit as neatly.
Well, it fits because Rick Gibstein runs a film course at the BP Learned.
Okay.
So they've always supported the idea of film.
Okay.
And when we approached them, they were more than willing to give us their venue.
Okay.
And there too, the parking is easy. If you can't park right in the parking lot by BP Learned, you could put your car in the Walgreens.
Okay.
And just walk over. It's very, very easy.
Yes.
There's also a lot of on-street parking.
Okay. All right. Good.
And I believe it's 93 Queen we're showing there.
Yes, indeed. 93 Queen.
And that's a delightful little movie.
And that'll be...
Spunky woman.
Yeah, that'll be a surprise to people who don't really know this community very well.
Yes.
And you'll see that they have made, and political activism is the game. And you could be anybody. That's the whole idea. One person makes a difference. So one person gets another person, and then you have a little movement, and you make changes. Important changes in the community. And then this woman goes on to have a really quite an illustrious life as an attorney, and then as a judge. So again, we don't always think of the women with the wigs on their heads who can do so much, but they actually
do.
They
and
can,
they
and they do.
Yes.
And they absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think for Jews, it's actually, even who are unfamiliar with the community, it's an interesting eye opener for them. And for people who you might see these people and think that they're from Amish country in Pennsylvania. Here's a story about who they are, because if you meet people from other parts of the country and they see Orthodox Jews looking like that, they think, oh, it's the Amish have come.
You remind me of the Frisco Kid, the scene with Wilder and the Frisco Kid.
So it's a great eye opener for people, and you'll be entertained at the same time. And then just to repeat ourselves, so the two movies at the Mystic Luxury Cinema are going to be The Cake Maker, a wonderful, warm-hearted story, May 16th at 7. This is a surprise kind of story, and I think you'll enjoy it. Most of these films are not in English, so you'll go through all kinds of subtitles, which is fine. I mean, that's the whole point of an international film festival. It gives you an opportunity to, if you know German, it'll be a good way to test your German, or your Hebrew. If you don't know, want to get a little fast track on picking up on your language skills, you go ahead and learn from these kinds of things. We have, interesting enough, 2 German films this time, so it's interesting for people who know a little Yiddish. I mean, they can kind of test themselves with the German, because that's where they took it from, the German language. So it's a great kind of opportunity. And then The Law, which closes, is in French. So that's a great opportunity for you to test your French. And this is a very interesting story, and this is a very interesting woman. She is a French Jew, and her story of herself is a fascinating one, and her work in politics, and how those politics then framed her in terms of kind of a certain sense of morality, which then led to this enormous fight, which resulted in a change in French law allowing abortion. And so it's a kind of an interesting story, because it's this woman is a fascinating person. And the way that the movie talks about how she's driven to become a great advocate for something that clearly was not popular at that point in time, raises kinds of issues about women's health and women having responsibility for their own physical being. And I think it's a kind of an interesting story. I say that because we're in the United States having an interesting political time when you have so many women who are running for president of the United States. I think people who are running, I don't know that they know, but they should actually see this movie, because it's inspiring in terms of taking a certain moral position and then putting that into political terms. So I think that people will enjoy that. And you, audience, who are looking at perhaps women politicians, should look at this woman, because she was a politician before she actually became this champion of a particular kind of event. So definitely you want to see The Law. And then, of course, if you live in Westerly, and you don't have to live in Westerly to come visit us. We are a lovely community. You should come and support the film festival and support the Granite Theater. And I guarantee you will have delicious pastries and cakes from that opening reception at the Granite Theater, where we will be presenting the 1947 masterpiece, Gentleman's Agreement, about anti-Semitism, and how we journalists find out and publicize this kind of event. And it's important because it's also a great hands-on thank you for the journalism community for doing the kinds of stuff that actually helps all of us. They uncover things that, in fact, we don't even know what's going on. So that's kind of an outline of the film festival. I want to thank Jerry for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's his 25th year, so we want to go out in a smash, and we want so many people coming that they can't find enough seats. So do find out. Go to jfec.com. Look at the schedule. I'm sure there's a movie that you're going to love. I also want to take an opportunity to put in my plug, as I always do, for the Literary Salon, Books and Brews, where we have local authors and the public reading from their favorite fiction, nonfiction. This month, in order to celebrate Mother's Day, we are thinking about moms. So I want you to come out. It's Literary Salon, Books and Brews, hosted by the Malted Barley in downtown Westerly. Plenty of parking, just look out on the street. 7:30 on May 9th. Come on upstairs, and if you have a poem or something from a book that you would like to read, if you have a play, we might even have a couple of guitar players there on May 9th. So we welcome the public to come on up. It's an opportunity to hear from local authors, and also if you have something that you want, a little thespian in you, and you want to do a little public reading, we love it. My hat's off to Colin Bennett, the owner of the Malted Barley, who allows me to do this. I thank him, and he's a great community asset. So this is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer for Community Showcase. Please come out and see the film festival. Come out to Literary Salon in downtown Westerly, and I want to thank you and enjoy the spring.